Hey, and welcome to another episode of Making the Right Play. I'm your host, Ishi, with my co-host.
Mane.
Today we have another special guest on the show. This is Maleeka, and this is the second time we're bringing her on the show after a technical glitch on the first one. But how's it going, Maleeka?
It's going good. I was just telling Manat and Ishra about how these are like the final 2 weeks before exam week and reading week starts, so it's a bit hectic. But
Yeah, thanks for coming. I mean, I know it's a busy time, but thanks for coming along. And Maleeka, just for the introduction about Maleeka, she's a first-year student at Yale-NUS with interests in economics and political science. Correct me if I'm wrong, Maleeka. Maleeka, I've spoken to Maleeka for the last couple of years, and she's always kind of like presented me with all these interesting experiences she's had in like high school, even in her gap year, and even through university, through her stories and everything. She's always been able to make the best out of every situation she's had. So thank you for coming along, Maleeka, and I'm very glad that you joined.
Thank you for having me. I'm just gonna interject and tell you this little story because it may seem like I'm doing this because I'm on the podcast, but it's not. I was with a couple of friends last night, having cheese and kind of unwinding, and I told them that I had to leave early because I wanted to get sleep before this. And they were like, "Oh, what is this?" And I was telling them how it is basically a podcast for college kids and how, Mamet, you yourself do content, and this is just useful for college students. And they were like, "Oh, I would have been so grateful if I had this when I was applying," because it's tough being a first gen kid. So this is great. Thank you.
Thanks. And it's I'm glad it kind of came through quick because we had I think all three of us we ran through a lot of struggles right when we were applying to university, and I think Ishira and I kind of considered advice for our younger selves. So yeah.
In the interest of not dislocating my shoulder by patting myself on the back too hard. Anyway, I'm glad to have. I'm glad to know that people are actually, getting good things out of this. But so Maleeka, you're a freshman, Yale-NUS. How's that going?
It's going good. Being a freshman at Yale-NUS means that I'm doing majority Common Core modules. So it's basically required modules. And right now I'm struggling with writing an article for scientific inquiry, which is something I've never done before. Writing an article about how whether or not race should be considered when determining medical practices. So this is interesting. Yale-NUS is challenging, I think, because it is a fairly hard school to get into. And there's a lot required. There's a lot of academic pressure. And so college has been difficult, but it's also been very rewarding. I've gotten to do things and gotten to explore academia in ways that I've never considered exploring. So yeah, it's rewarding but challenging.
Yeah. And I know you chose the liberal arts kind of stream, and you still, I mean, you've always kind of maintained that you like economics and politics, but how are you kind of exploring your interest in college, and what have you learned thus far through your first year, and what have you learned about yourself? Because I think when I applied and when I came in, I felt I didn't really know much about my academic interests and where I wanted to be, but the first year really changed a lot. So I was just wondering how that was for you, that experience was for you.
Yeah, so I do also really enjoy philosophy. So the degree would probably be PPE.
Okay.
Coming into college, I started actually reading Mill and Hobbes, and they're just old men that kind of ramble along, and it's difficult to feel for it the way I did feel for it. So that's been interesting. That's changed my perspective of philosophy. Even though I do think that the content is rewarding, it's just difficult to kind of plow through all these really old texts. In addition to that, I've also got to explore things more humanities, and I've also gotten to explore some of the STEM fields and CS.
Nice. Okay.
Yes, that was not fun. We had to do a compulsory module, which was quantitative reasoning, so we had to work with R, and that is always a struggle because I've never had a background in it. It's kind of also taught me things that I'm not interested in. So like dabbling with R is not something that's interesting to me, but I might consider doing Python next time.
Yeah.
And the sciences are something that I was kind of fixed on not doing, but it's been really interesting so far. So that's changed my perspective of sciences. I've also, in terms of political science, I've realized that I'm very interested in housing in Singapore. So I might consider doing things like urban studies as a minor. Yeah, because it's interesting to see how like socioeconomics and housing play a role in someone's lives.
Right. And it seems like, you're into like this very diverse kind of problem spaces, and like you like to solve problems in like all of these spaces. And I was just wondering, like when you kind of like put all of these things together, like what do you think you want to kind of accomplish with your degree at the end of it, like by the 4 years? Obviously this might change like down the line, but like, as of now, like how do you feel about that?
Currently I care a lot about the economy and like public policy. So before I came to college, I worked 2 internships at 2 economic firms, at 2 economic think tanks rather. And that is kind of the direction in which I want to head towards. I do want to work in public policy. I don't want to work within the government. So I'm looking at working with think tanks and NGOs. And I do see that happening. But in Singapore, because of the TG scheme, which is where I'm bonded to the government, I will have to work at a higher paying job than a think tank would allow. So I'm looking at also probably doing maybe company policy, maybe even consultancy.
Okay.
Those are kind of fields I have to look at for the most immediate job market as such.
Cool. I'm going to bounce back to something you said earlier about college being about not figuring out what you don't like as well, because I feel like that's such a strong part of going to college that a lot of people don't really understand when they leave for it. When I left for college, I thought I was hard set on being a physicist, and I found out that while I do enjoy learning about physics, doing physics is not my cup of tea, and as a result, I wound up choosing, like I like computer science, like applied kind of things, right? And that ended up being my kind of like, this is what I want to do, instead of this concept, the platonic concept of what I actually wanted, right? And I know, Manit, with you, like you started off like SWE was the dream, and now you're thinking, PD, like this might, product management, product design, that might be the avenue you want to take. And did college play any part in that, or is it most about your internships?
I think when I was applying to college, it's like most of my schools are very like business econ kind of oriented. And then after a while, like I was working at like Freeme in my gap year, and then I realized like no offense to like anyone or whatever, but like personally, like my brain just doesn't tick on these problems, and realized like, I'm not going to do this anymore. And like I kind of gravitated towards coding once I came to school. Also, like one thing about coding, like I don't know, I haven't used R, but like Python is like very, very much more interesting. I think you should definitely try it out. I mean, like I totally understand if like someone's not interested, because like it's like it's very sit down and grind it through kind of work. But at the same time, I think it's very interesting. That's just a sidebar.
I'm going to interject and say R is probably as easy or easier than Python.
Okay. Is it okay? Cool. I have no experience with it, but yeah.
That is really nice.
Okay. But sorry about college. I think I think I figured out that SWE is not something I want to, like software engineering is not something I want to do for the rest of my life, because it doesn't really capture my entire skill set. And I don't really like kind of like sit down and push code like a code monkey through like to the entire day, and I feel like I missed out on like the more public speaking kind of side of it. So but the nice part about like all these internships and stuff is that they let you explore these skills, and they give you like, so you can spend 20% of your time doing something else. So even internships and college and everything, like I'm glad that there's enough space here to kind of like figure things out for sure. But yeah, I think college is a nice place to figure out that I didn't like economics, because I took one class and I kind of like sit through everything. But yeah. Yeah.
That's usually the case with a lot of like people who want to do economics, and they learn like algebraic economics, and they go and once the calculus hits, they're all dropping classes. Like it's
right.
pretty normal phenomenon, and I see it everywhere. but yeah, it's cool that we all had like three different kind of avenues to like understand what we don't like. Like Maleeka, for you, I'm guessing it's been like classes that you've taken, right? Like this is not my thing. Me was doing research, and then for Mohammed there was internships and sort of thing. Right?
Yeah, and Maleeka, I know you mentioned like you did like a couple of internships, and obviously I'm pretty sure this happened in your gap year, and I think you were kind of getting involved with so many other things in your gap year. I think you had Thrifty, and I think you were working with TNL also, the radio as a radio host, as a part-time radio host. I was wondering like what your experiences in a gap year was like, and what like would you like what's your final verdict on it? Would you recommend that to someone, or do you think that might be a waste of time in the conventional sense?
Yeah, gap year was definitely important. I would recommend it based on my own experiences, but I do understand that some people just want to kind of get to college fast, just in case they lose touch of like the academic side of themselves, and it gets nasty. But my gap year was important. I think I juggled a lot of things. So I did have I did 2 internships, not simultaneously, but one after the other.
Okay.
I did work at TNL as a radio host, and I was also a chair for Common during that year, Common and NUN, which took up a fair amount of time, even if it was just traveling. So I do factor that into my gap year. I was also tutoring, and I did have Thrifty on the side. So Thrifty was basically I would sell secondhand clothes and books online. I think firstly that taught me time management, and also made me realize how certain things were just not worth my time, because time is so precious, and it also taught me certain fields in which I really wanted to enter. So my taste into economics and public policy was very, very interesting, and I decided that I was definitely going to pursue that post-graduation. It also kind of molded me into an adult. We discussed this in our previous recording, but I do think it is important. It molded me into an adult for sure. I was a baby once I graduated high school. I was very my parents or like the institution never mollycoddled me, but you kind of knew which path to take, which subjects to take. It was very like linear.
Linear,
right? But when you leave that and you're in the job market for the first time, understanding how to pitch yourself, understanding like skills to gain, hard skills, soft skills, administrative work was all very interesting. And working with people that could potentially be your bosses in years to come is also very interesting. And so I think it did really mature me, and I would definitely recommend it, because it helped me in college when pitching myself to people, presentations, research even was all just good experience that I garnered through my gap year.
Yeah, I never took a gap year. 100% regret. Should have taken a gap year. Because I feel like the point you brought up about just like facing uncertainty for the first time. If you do that on a gap year, it's way better than doing that in college. I did that in college, and interesting stuff happened. But just like like you said, like in high school or middle school or whatever, you have some certainty in the path you're going to take, and when you go into college for the first time, you have so much opportunity available to you that it can be really daunting to pick one. Like for me, I think that was also part of it. Like I almost had this kind of reactionary kind of action. I basically reacted to all this opportunity being presented by closing all my avenues off and saying I'm going to be a physicist. And when I was leaving high school, but I feel like if I took a gap year, and then if I had explored what options were available to me, if I had explored research in that field by the time I got there, I mean, I had some research, but not really any. But if I had had that opportunity to go out and like do something in the real world, and that was related to what I wanted to do, I would have been able to gauge my interest in that, and then I probably would have picked a different major. Something like that. I mean, I don't regret doing anything, but it's I think a gap year I would recommend to anybody, and Mohammed can add on to this.
Yeah, no, I mean, same. Like when I was graduating school, I was like 16 plus. Like I didn't know I don't know, shit. Like, I mean, like, I thought I didn't want to do like engineering, meaning like I didn't want to like weld stuff. And then I just like stayed away from that. Like I wanted to stay away from sciences, but then I kind of like gravitated towards it. And yeah, it's through like, you have to kind of like increase your experience portfolio to really understand it. Like, and I feel like sometimes like, I think in the US and like with liberal arts and with liberal arts programs, I think the nice part about it is you still have like a kind of space to explore, and kind of like, you know, you have a chance to kind of like take a U-turn with like everything you're doing. But with most programs, like even outside, like even some programs in Canada, you have to apply to like a faculty at least. Like you need to know whether you're at least doing like the sciences or the arts. Sometimes you have flexibility, but like for me personally, like once I chose that, it was very helpful with like internships. So it's like a chain reaction, right? And even for me, like I met a lot of people, like, so the people I met through my gap year, they introduced me to my mentor in college, and my mentor in college introduced me to other people. So like your network back at home, like a strong network is extremely important. And my high school didn't really have like a very good career guidance kind of system. So like no one, yeah, I can't talk about this way too much, I guess. But yeah, like, so I think I met people who were really focused with like the university search process. I didn't know anything. I didn't know about like SATs, like how to go about it. I didn't know about the Common App. I didn't know about any of that. So I really needed that time to get about like my application. So yeah, and yeah, and yeah, about like liberal arts and like just that arena of things. Maleeka, what's like your experience like with like Yale-NUS? Like, do you admire the flexibility that you have? I know we covered like a bit of it earlier, but what, like, do you know like the pros and the cons of being in the liberal arts system? Because I'm not in like a direct liberal arts program, and I was just very curious about how that was.
Yeah, just before I get into liberal arts, I do want to also say that
Yeah.
the gap year, some people think that the gap year is detrimental because it may just seem that you wasted time. But
Yeah.
I think the kind of internships you get or whatever experience you do is just extra things that you can add on your CV when you're applying to colleges. And I think it's very, very important. And also in terms of networks, like because of my last internship, I was able to connect with a professor who works in Singapore at NUS. And that was like excellent because as soon as I connected with him, he was like, okay, great. You know, when you're applying for internships, I will like give you a recommendation here. And that's so important because Singapore is a very competitive job market.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, in terms of liberal arts is great for people that haven't like, who are not 100% sure of what they want to do. And yes, like you're kind of given this array of subjects, fields that you probably would never have touched. I have a CS friend who would never have touched literature and humanities or philosophy and political thought. But I mean, he is, and he's actually doing quite well in this. So he's like gaining skills that he would never have gained otherwise.
Right.
I think liberal arts is also great if you kind of want a holistic education. It provides you experience and exposure to like subjects that some people enter college and are very fixed in the path they want to take, right? Even if it's in a liberal arts college, they're not indecisive. Okay. But it gives them an opportunity to kind of explore and cultivate talents outside. The cons of it are obviously because you do take so much time to kind of focus on Common Core, you take time away from your major. So you declare your major end of year 2, and that means that you have 2 less years than the average person at a college where it's more specialized to cultivate hard skills. And depending on the major, that may be very detrimental to you and your career, or not so bad and can be compensated by the soft skills you garner through a liberal arts college. Like, I definitely think that there are soft skills that you get more so here than at like NUS, for example. And this is useful to me because consultancy, and jobs like that, are the field in which I want to take, benefit from soft skills, right? And they look for kids with soft skills and a variety and of like a greater exposure to different fields. But some skills, some areas don't require that. Like I have a friend who, like I was saying, in CS, because he's like impacted by this like setback, he has to work extra to kind of apply for internships, show that his cap is good, and do like all these other courses outside of the field. So I mean, there are pros and cons. It depends, I think, on the career path you want to take. But if you're not sure about your career, this is a great place to kind of figure it out.
I forgot to ask you this. What's it like living in Singapore? Because we've asked this question from people in New York, people in London. What's it like in Singapore?
So I think my account of Singapore is going to be a little biased because like YaleNUS is a little bubble on its own. We live so close to NUS, like we're on NUS territory, which means that so much of what you do is probably going to be within this institution, whether it's getting food because it's subsidized, right? All of those things, that we have like shuttles to take you to different parts of campus. All your activities are probably going to be on campus unless you're like going out for a couple of drinks. It's legal, like you have to be 18 to drink here, so like a lot more kids drink here. So a lot of it I do spend on campus. I think for me, it's been very interesting, and I talk about this all the time with my friends. Sri Lanka itself is a very small country, right? But like, if I'm not mistaken, size-wise, Singapore is 91 times smaller, right? So it's tremendously smaller, and sometimes it can feel a little bit claustrophobic, but you kind of find these pockets of the country where it's just yours, and it's great. Singapore is so safe. I think I cannot underestimate or understate that enough. As a female, it's sorry. Can you hear that? The notifications?
No.
Okay. Yeah. So I cannot understate how important it is, like for safety. Also, just being even though I'm a minority, like being brown, that's never like I've never experienced outright racism, you know. Okay. That's super important. At the same time, I mean, Singapore is different. Like in Sri Lanka, I mean, you criticize the government left, right, and center, right? In Singapore, you have to be careful about that because any claims you make, you can get sued for defamation. So you have to be able to like support it. And also, like as an international, I can't be part of protests or like stuff like that. So I mean, it has its pros and cons, but Singapore is great because it's safe. The cost of living for me is not too high because here in US, like we get food from the school, accommodation, like because I'm on financial aid, I do like get a lot of it subsidized, so I'm not really paying for much. Yeah, so things are pretty good. Like I can't complain, especially now given like COVID. I get to go to campus, like I get to go to in-person classes. So all of that cannot be understated.
Yeah, I'm glad you got that experience in your first year though. Like I kind of like sympathize with people who missed out on that in the first year. Like I miss going to school. I never thought I'd say it, but yeah, I do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like socializing, I get to do socializing because I get to campus, and I can't like undervalue that experience, you know.
Yeah.
We have the special question, and Maleeka, you can't use your answer from last time. Manat, do you want to do the honors?
You know, I'm going to mess this up, but sure, I'll try. So if you could, the question is, if you could lick the foot of any fictional or non-fictional character, dead or alive, and if you can get their power, who would it be and why? Right, okay. I didn't have a mental breakdown when I said that.
Yeah, I think power. Okay, I guess this is a very like okay, there's this person. So it's not Professor Oak, but it is this professor from Harvard, and his name is Michael J. Sandel. So he was sort of my introduction to philosophy, and political philosophy, and I loved it. So when I was 14, I was reading his book, and I was also watching his lectures. And it was so central to argumentation for debating, which became very important in my life. And to this day, like I reference justice by him continuously, because I really like his argumentation. I mean, there are like now reading the people that he was arguing on behalf of, I understand that there's a big chunk of it that's cut out, but he really applies politics and political philosophy into like daily situations, and I really enjoyed it. So if I could lick the foot of someone, I guess I would lick his foot, not him, his foot, because because I mean I admire him for one, and also because I would just want to have all that knowledge.
Cool.
A solid answer. Okay.
Yeah, so somebody was bound to end up licking the person and not licking the person, their foot. But yeah, you're fine. We've been through 17 guests. Somebody was bound to make that error.
Yeah.
I mean, didn't Diane say he would give James Franco a light lick?
A light lick. He said like.
Okay, that's a good answer. It's very thought out. Makes me think that you prepared for this.
Shower today. I was like, I can't say Professor Oak again.
Anyway, Maleeka, thanks for coming on for a second time. We really appreciate you taking time out of like your busy, final weeks of freshman year, I guess, to re-record this whole thing. And yeah, it's been awesome chatting. So yeah, thanks on behalf of me and Manith.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed here, and I think what you guys do is amazing and very important. So I was happy to come for a second time.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. And if anybody's still listening, thanks for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode of Making the Right Play. And cut. Thanks for listening to another episode of Making the Right Play. You can find our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, Content. This will keep you posted on new episodes, bonus content, and blooper reels. We hope you make the right play.